What's up, O'Brien Army? So I have a rather unusual theoretical scenario for you. So, theoretical scenario. A high-functioning autistic student at a high school in California is not focusing on his schoolwork and chattering a lot about Chernobyl, and a female student gets annoyed and confronts him about it. And then, as the autistic student starts playfully scolding her, his eyes glow bright blue and his voice cuts out mid-sentence, and he continues talking in mute for a few seconds, and his body details look like a static TV screen for a few seconds. And then the autistic student shapeshifts into what looks like a worker from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in a full uniform with radiation burns and blood all over him. And the autistic student resumes playfully scolding the female student in a Soviet version of the Ukrainian language for a good minute, and then sings Aluminum Cucumbers by Kino perfectly. And then the autistic student turns back into himself and goes right back to what he was before. And then the autistic student smiles and looks at an imaginary person just behind the female student's shoulder and asks, "Was that you?" What happens next if this were to happen in real life? If this exact scenario occurred in a real-life California high school, it would trigger an immediate massive emergency response. Because the event breaks the laws of physics, the reaction would blend standard school safety protocols with government, scientific, and media chaos. Here is exactly what would happen next, step by step. Immediate classroom reaction, mass panic. Students and the teacher would scream, run to the corners of the room, or bolt out of the door. The female student, she would likely go into shock, fall backward, or flee in terror from the graphic imagery of blood and radiation burns. School lockdown, the teacher would immediately trigger a panic button or call the front office. The school would initiate a hard lockdown under the assumption of a chemical, radiological, or unknown terrorist threat. Emergency services and hazmat intervention. First responders, police, fire departments, and specialized CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear hazmat teams would swarm the school. Geiger counters. First responders would immediately scan the student, the classroom, and the female student for actual ionizing radiation, fearing a dirty bomb or localized contamination. Quarantine. The entire class, especially the autistic student and the female student, would be placed in strict medical isolation until radiation clearing is complete. 3. Federal and scientific takeover. Agency intervention. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, FBI, and the Department of Energy would immediately take custody of the student. Scientific isolation. The student would be moved to a high-security military or scientific research facility for evaluation. Testing. Scientists would run MRIs, DNA sequencing, and neurological scans to figure out how a human body could alter its mass, voice, frequency, light emission, and visual texture, the static TV effect. Psychological and investigative follow-up. Interrogation. Investigators would grill the student about the imaginary person he looked at, and they would want to know if he is experiencing a hallucination, interacting with an invisible entity, or controlled by an unknown technology. Trauma counseling. Crisis counselors would be deployed to the high school to treat the severe psychological trauma of the witnesses who just watched reality fracture in front of them. 5. Global media and public aftermath. Viral footage. Despite lockdowns, classmates would have captured the shape-shifting on their smartphones. Within minutes, the video would flood TikTok, X, and YouTube. Debunking versus belief. Millions would initially claim it as a highly sophisticated CGI hoax or an AI digital overlay. National security crisis. Once the government confirms the video is real and quarantines the school, the world would face a paradigm shift. It would spark global panic, regarding supernatural phenomena, extraterrestrial life, or hidden military bioweapons. So, not exactly the best things to be talking about on the internet, but there you go. Like and subscribe, leave a comment, click the bell notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.